here we are. You
Good morning.
Get your meat. Yep, coming from the frigid waters of Lake Michigan, and I'm sure it's freezing up there in California.
Oh, it's freezing, man. It's actually we started to finally get some normalized weather.
Yeah. Well, was it hot or was it just raining?
No, we just had no, we haven't had much rain this last month or so, but we have what we call the June gloom, but it was going through May. So we get a lot of the coastal fog coming in.
Yeah.
And it takes a while to burn off. And then, then it gets pleasantly warm a little bit later in the afternoon.
Yeah, I remember that because I remember we would spend like some Junes at Mission Beach down in San Diego. And I was like, God, it's so weird how this comes out, this fog comes out, burns off, but it was nice. It was always ended up being a nice day. But
I think San Diego gets it a little more. I mean, I'm just a little bit in from the coast, so probably 20 minutes or so, 22 minutes through Topanga or Malibu Canyon, and you're at the PCH.
Well, fantastic. It was great to see you. And I know you got your puppy cut. I got to get my puppy's got to get in a groom for the summer. It's that time. I'm happy to see some heat because it's been freezing forever. And
oh yeah, well the doodles, man, they just they grow, man. Those coats grow. So like before we brought him in, which was 2 weeks ago, and he was depressed after that. Like he had like an attitude like, oh man, I'm dejected because I think it's like, what happened to all my fur and
pardon me, oh my god,
the hair in my front of my eyes. Yeah,
I don't even like it when you take the collars off after a while. They're like, hey, that's part of me. You got to put that thing back on. It gets all weird and stuff.
That's right.
So for the people here, I see people dropping in, which is great. Thank you to everybody who drops in. And we're kind of doing this as a series and maybe stepping up the pace a little bit on these. So that's why you see the numbers. We're starting to put numbers on those. So this general Q&A. I think it's fun to do. I think it's nice to drop in and every so often and you drop all your guru knowledge on people like that. And but as always, I'm watching chat. So drop in your comments, your hellos, people. Drop in a queue for a question if you can. That helps. But if not, I will be back to doing my job while Bruce is doing his. So Bruce, I'm just gonna I'm gonna hand off and let you do your thing. We'll talk to you in a bit.
Okay, man. So topically, I've been talking to a lot of different students. Oops, I can't hear you. You got yourself.
Put me up. I'm going to switch this over.
Oh, there you go. Right.
There we go.
Yeah. So, topically, just teaching 5 days a week and I don't know, many students a day. Topically, I keep, experience like guys who, like the newer ones that come to me, the consideration of this and the pains or the issues that we might have from the repetitive motion. Our instrument is absolutely physical. There's no getting around it. And if you don't have good delivery systems that you've watched where you can get the fluidity out and kind of minimize the tension. Now, you can't come into the game like, a rubber ball without any impact, but you do want to have a general, natural relaxation to what you can do when you're bringing the stick to the cymbal. Like I said, but you still want to have some points. So there needs to be an understanding of pressure point and impact inside the hand. That being said, take care of your body. And it's not just about good practicing habits. It's also about being mindful of stretching or, some kind of a practice that brings you into a mindfulness to movement, body movement, etc. So I've been a long time practicer of yoga, and I can't tell you how much that's been a benefit to my world. And it's been going on now for more than 20 years that I've been practicing. And I see it as such a benefit to staying, relatively healthy with our instrument. Yes, good practice habits are also necessities to developing your technical approach. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Some people kind of get miffed. Yoga, what's that? Well, it's been semi-corrupted. I have a former student who would be able to talk all about that because he has been a fixture on the LA yoga scene since way back, I think, to probably 2000. Not to say that yoga started then, but he just saw the thing where, video started to come out and there became, more sensationalism, so to speak, a little bit more of the, glitz and glam, and then incorporating it and making it more of like an exercises kind of thing. Yeah, there's the postures and the flex and stuff like that, but the important value is the breath. And as we are sitting here and playing and practicing, those moments of mindfulness need to be also cultivated in our practice. The breath and how you move and the relationship to that. So it becomes second nature, consciously to sit and focus on your breath when you're practicing. That's not so easy because you're so involved in what you're doing practice-wise that you might lose sight of that. And I remember listening to Steve Gadd in Up Close, his very first video, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was the video. And he talked about something about focusing on the breath. And it kind of freaked me out because, like, well, how do you breathe in time? Like, in other words, if you're playing you're going to be inhaling and exhaling with the quarter note. But it's more about the awareness and not coming into your practice or you're gigging and holding your breath and then suddenly realize, geez, I haven't taken a breath in the last 10 bars. So that's one element of it, the breath, but also the flexibility. Again, the flexibility. I can tell you this now, can't say if it's the perfect lineage to the result, but many years ago, it was probably, I'm going to say 2004. I noticed I had a ganglion cyst, which is kind of like a calcified little growth, I think, on the tendons, if I'm not mistaken. And as I would bend my wrist, I could feel it. It didn't really hurt. But if I did in yoga a plank pose and just put my wrists in full, stretch mode with the body weight, me standing it's like a push-up pose, essentially. Man, it was like, oh, killing me. So, but what I would do is I would ease into it. And I did that, and I would hold those poses. And I got to tell you, about 2 to 3 weeks later, there was no more ganglion cyst. And it wasn't huge. I've seen people who've had huge ones, but it was prominent. You could see it. It was definitely a definitive bump. So what's the point to that? Be mindful in what you do. Those kind of stretches and flexes are so important. Like, we have to worry about our back sitting on a drum throne, our shoulders playing time, our wrists, our fingers, ankles, you name it. We got the whole body involved in the instrument. So, just wanted to put that out there. I'm not some, yoga instructor, so I can't tell you like super detailed stuff. I know what I work on. I know what's beneficial to me. And after doing it for more than 20 years, probably 20, I don't know. I dabbled for maybe 8 years before I got serious, or 10 years. So I would qualify that as well. That would put me back to maybe 30 or 32 years of thinking about yoga. But as I say with drums too, there's nothing to it but to do it. You can think about it all you want and try to will it, but in essence, you need to perform and practice. So, once I got serious, like practicing your instrument, I was on a yoga mat about 300 days a year for many years. I'd bring it on the road with me when I travel and do gigs or workshops, because I would kind of combine those. When I would go to Europe, I would do a fair amount of workshops, and then I would do some gigs with my brother. Maybe another gig or two would pop up through somebody else, But it's been, for me, like one of the greatest additions in terms of a discipline. And along with being mindful of practice. So bringing us to the practice, the looseness element, watching, people do what they do. And I'm not saying that, let's say the less developed technique can prevent you from being a great musician, because there are many examples of guys who don't have a great technical delivery, or gals, I got to say. This is really about, musicianship, but opening the door to better technique will allow for, I think, greater expansion of your musicianship and your musicality. So for the, delivery of the stick, all those little elements that I would chew on, so to speak, developing your fingers, knowing where to make a good wrist turn in the German position, knowing, how to just lift naturally and find a drop to what I would call a molar strike, absolutely imperative. And the more you condition yourself to kind of let go and allow that to just fall into the time, of course, with a finale to the stroke, you're not going to, like I said, fall into it and just let everything go and not have a receiving mode to the drop of the stick. That can actually just add volumes to what you do. And I know it's easy to talk about several things. Hey, just hold the stick like this, or just let go. You got to recondition your reflexes. If you've been playing for, a certain amount of years, even a small amount of years, will bring a conditioning to your reflexes, whereby when the music goes on, you're thinking you want to play that too. And so the consideration of your delivery, and as Gruber would say, it's not what you do, it's how you do what you do. And, years of living and hanging with Freddie, and then post Freddie, years later, long after he's off the planet, a lot of those little philosophies still sit and resonate in my head. The identity of that becomes so much clearer now. I'll tell you a little funny story about Freddie. He would say to me, this is back in the 90s, so I already had like a good, 15 or 16 years of hanging with him. And he would look at me and go, Bruce, now I know. And I'd go, Freddie, you told me that like 5 days ago. No. Now I know. Okay. What's the moral of the story? I can kind of get what he's talking about, because as I've been teaching now for 43 years, you get a better perspective as you practice the art of teaching, as well as learning from your students and knowing how to navigate through different issues that come our way. In other words, it's a collaborative approach to what we're doing. Somebody tells me what their, kind of their goals are. I will help kind of set a path of that, still mindfully putting together the technical approach, but seeing how those things work, like in the redundancy factor of what I'm kind of fortunate to be doing every day, brings you to, now I get it. That's how that works. Oh, I see that, like the larger vision of all that stuff. So, back to thinking about the delivery, I was talking to many students, but one more recent guy, and they all say like, yeah, I really want to work on my singles, man. I got to get my singles together. And I always go, yeah, but in the larger scope of what we do as drummers, singles are like, the smallest percentile of what we would maybe play, and I'm talking about just straight up single strokes, and even if you were to just do full throttled singles like this, you do want to have a rhythmic component. And I think as well, unless you're doing a cymbal roll, you'd want to have some kind of rhythmic outline to that, where you're pushing out, again, like 6 notes or 8 notes or whatever the note value might be. If you're doing like 16th triplets or 32nd notes, sorry, I just jumped automatically into 32nd notes. Let's go back to 16th triplets and hang with my thought. I'm going to have a mode of, molaring it up. And am I going to use the fingers? Well, I could add a little finger if I'm in the American position and get a little push behind my molar. So let's just kind of design a little thing where I'm playing like. So while I'm locomoting the stick with my forearm, I'm getting a little finger push as well to that. The 16 triplets here that I just did before would be definitely just straight up molar. And would there really be fingers in there? Not really, because if you look at the side of my profile here, you don't see my fingers doing any like real opening and closing. They're being elastically drawn open from the motion that I allow from the perpetual motion. And that's also built on, the weight value of the stick. So then there's also a consideration of staying rooted to the sweet spot of the stick tip, rather important, because if you're recklessly going too high and not really being considerate of where you're sitting on the stick tip, that can be something that might throw you into a tonal disaster. You want to make sure that your tone is a major consideration of what you do, and how you impact your drum and your cymbal is going to be, putting forward like the tone that you're after. You spend a lot of money on cymbals and drums, make them sound pretty. I mean, if it's a good quality set, that's kind of, part of the game. But, you should be able to play on anything and kind of make it sound real good. So I'll tell you a story about tone. If you think about piano, I never really considered this. I thought, oh, piano, how can you make it sound different? But the touch and the attack can be definitely different. And so there was a guy that I met through Freddie Gruber, who was living in The Hague in the Netherlands. And he was an expatriate. I think he moved there in 71 or 72. He became an educator as well as a player, but he became an educator in the conservatory system there, where they have really great jazz conservatories. And he was also, because of being an American guy, he was a call for guys like Dexter Gordon and Ben Webster. And he was friends with Chet Baker and also friends with Bill Evans, the pianist. And he said at one point, Bill came and was visiting him, and he invited him over to the apartment. And Irv had an old upright piano. And he said, hey, can I make you some tea? Yeah, I'd love some. Irv goes out in the kitchen. He's brewing up a cup of tea. I guess Bill looked at Irv's piano and started playing. And Irv said it was just astounding because it was that tone. It was Bill. And he really just was amazed, because he said, well, I know that piano, and the revelation of that for him. And I'm sure he already considered that, but to hear it in that context so close and knowing his instrument was rather, fascinating for him. So with us as well, we can bring 17 guys in here, play this drum set. It's going to sound like 17 different drum sets. So your consideration of tone and how you impact the stick to the cymbal. Notice when I'm coming down here, and I'm just kind of doing a molar strike, as I would call it, without, impacting or throwing it down. I'm dropping with it. And look at how the stick pops back to me, right? We could do it all three grips, and I get the same sensibility. And so that is a draw of knowing how to impact, know your balance factor, and let the stick come back to you and start working with that. Is that the full game? No, but that's a good portion of it. There's also the rebound factor and being able to let go, because you may condition yourself for one sensibility and then you're applying a different sensibility with a paradiddle, and all of a sudden you're going, oh shit, man. So for example, if I play a paradiddle slower, I might bottom out and get that good strike at that tempo, but I can't hang on to that stick like that when I'm playing faster. So the other sensibility to be mindful of would be to get that easy rebound and allow that stick to just fall back to you for free. Right? So there's my 1 E and a 2 E, and then I've got to get my good delivery of the upstroke. If I don't have that good delivery, then it kind of corrupts the downstroke. Your upstrokes, when they're good and nice and well thought through and delivered, will yield a great downstroke. So that rebound factor is absolutely imperative to be able to play, because if I go, I'm just going to corrupt it a little bit and try to hold on to the stick and play. Well, that gets one kind of a nasalier tone, but I feel like I'm also working more. So let's just let it go, and let's look at it from the side here. And as I play a little bit slower, I'm going to take advantage of the delivery system and feel the nice relaxed hinge in the elbow. And now the shoulder naturally will roll, and not leading with the elbow. I want to lead from the back of the wrist. I don't need to do that. And if I do something like that, it's kind of counterproductive. I also feel a little twinge, like a rubber band snap once in a while in that shoulder. I don't want this. I also don't want like lateral throws to the stroke. I want to sit a little bit more in delivering a more vertical laden stroke where it's really just coming up here and it's built off on this larger motion. And as you minimize, you can really start to feel that natural release to the wrist and get the more vertical nature of the stroke. You might not be comfortable at first as you're developing that. I mean, I'll get you there because that's what I do day in and day out. But you might be inclined to kind of do a workaround and come in here. You start to slice the stick to the pad, and you're not going to get the kind of response rebound wise that you want. You can corrupt it, no doubt. In other words, you can come back to it and go, yeah, but for posture gesture, yeah, absolutely. But you want to sit more in a place of knowing how that moves and understanding the value of the more vertical element to the stick because it comes back to you more like a yo-yo, which, you don't throw a yo-yo sideways. You can goof around. Like I said, if you know how it works, you can have workarounds.
Hey, Bruce, is this a good time to just kind of welcome? I don't want to cut you off, but welcome some people in. And I don't know if you want to take a couple questions.
Sure, I'd love to. That's Matt G. Hey, Matt, how are you, man?
Some guys from Oakland. You got some Jersey. You got guys from all over. I have one from my own backyard here. I love the Menominee Falls. That's just right down the road. I grew up summers there, so that's kind of fun.
Nice.
Good to have a cheesehead around here. That's for sure. I mean, we've got some folks from the Netherlands. So that's really...
Hank was a student of mine with the Drumeo technique.
That's right. Yeah, you mentioned that.
We engaged quite a bit. Yes.
What does this cover? Do you want a couple questions before you move along?
If you got questions, absolutely.
Okay, let me just grab a couple of these. Let's just throw this first one out here, which was Thomas. Can you talk about how the approach pivoting over the middle finger? Thanks a lot, Thomas. So
okay, yeah, so that's funny. I have a newer student who was struggling with, this, what do I say? This idea of where's the fulcrum? Well, that's like, where's Waldo? It's all over the place. With the full, if you know what I mean, culturally, that's maybe somebody doesn't know where's Waldo? Anyway, push that aside. In my world, the trinity of the index finger and thumb and middle finger in German would be our, let's say, our best alliance for a good pivot in German. In French, it's going to be the index finger and the thumb, and the back three fingers are working subserviently with the bounce of the stick. I would be one to say, as a workaround, a posture, and a gesture. Mind you, this is something when I get off my more poignant approach to technique, you could take the index finger and kind of hang there. But I don't want to really do that if I want more nimbleness to the squeezes I want to get out of the push and pull technique, or 3-stroke roughs or 4-stroke roughs. I want all systems firing. I don't want to shortchange the totality of my hand in relationship to the stick. But if I'm doing a fulcrum wrist bounce where I'm using my fulcrum to activate my wrist, my primary would be my middle finger as the best finger, but all three fingers would be attached to the body of the stick. Okay, and if I play faster, the fingers would start to draw in, and then eventually it would have to change to some kind of a finger. You can only play so fast with the wrists. But my point being is that my fulcrum would be built there, but I would also be talking about the feel of the fulcrum over the ring, or the pinky and the ring finger falling forward as well. Back there, that would be a pivot point to pursue. And so what I'm not going to get deep into the woods here now is that my approach, I have several little activating exercises, and I'm not talking BS. I'm talking real exercises. I've been doing this for 43 years, where you can actualize what I'm talking about with the way that I express it, really trying to narrate the feel with all the little nuts and bolts. And I have several guys who will corroborate that are in their 50s, 60s, something where you go like, geez, I've been playing so I've been playing so long in this approach. Will I ever be able to change my drumming and change my technical approach? Yes, you will. I have hundreds, probably. I can't even say, maybe thousands. I don't know. But the approach, just to say like a quick tag phrase, play the fulcrum over here, or let the index finger stay loose, like what Jimmy would do, and maybe the pinky finger's on or off, I'd want it on, depending. You can add and subtract your digits, so to speak, but still working in the confines of knowing how, when they all come together, what each finger can present as a strength or a role. That's R-O-L-E, not R-O-L-L, to what we do and produce with our hands. In the molar method, I want to be able to sit on my ring and pinky finger and get that nice draw. A lot of times, and this goes back to studying with Freddie, and also a good thinking of me, I went and studied hand percussion for a while. And so, there's a heel to a finger thing that you do on the congas, right? You've seen Giovanni Hidalgo, well, when he was really at his high level of burning. I know that he's had some physical issues that have come about, but that dude was Buddy Rich on the congas, man. And I told that to Gruber back in, I think, 87. I had maybe it was 85. I don't remember, but it had to be 87 because I was with MCA at that time when my brother and I were recording records there. But I've used this as an example of what's going on with the molar method, so to speak. Okay, that's the motion here, feeling your heel of your palm come to the pad and lifting and letting this be a release to that. Well, when you have the hand set up well and have conducted, a refining of positioning of the stick, and feel the sensitivity of the fingerprints and feel the pressure point in the back of the hand, feel the placement of the stick seated in the last joint of the index finger with the thumbprint on the opposite side, and keeping and maintaining the integrity of the acoustic resonant chamber here. That changes the game. Tonally, it also changes the game of what you do physically. You still got to play. There's no magic answers. Like you can sit around and, like I said, will it and think about it. You got to practice and you got to play. So, we have the most advanced technological access in our world for practice. We have great metronomes. We can subdivide things. We have metronomes that can count. You have apps that can slow a tune down a couple of percentiles so you can kind of hang with it. Lovely. You still got to play with the real band. That's the most important factor. But those elements of, being redundant in what you do is going to bring out the result. So I use focusing on breath often helps in stress. Absolutely, man. Yeah, it's so important to be able to just kind of sit and, let the body do its thing, and direct how it's going to move in a musical setting, and be able to sit back and breathe and get that to happen. You're talking about basically we're conversing on the instrument. Well, if, you're playing a groove, you're still conversing, you're a component of, but in a jazz context, you're really in like a multiple conversation there with many people. Can you talk about the height of the drum throat? Yes, I will. I just, again, because I talk about these things weekly, I think it's rather important to sit high. And the reason, and guys like Vinny Colaiuta, who I've been, conversing with over the last 5 or 6 months now, we worked together many years ago. And then he commented on a video that I threw out there of Freddie Gruber. And we started a dialogue, and all of a sudden we were doing some Zoom hangs and et cetera, and talking shop. He would ask me questions. I would give him my answers. And I knew if I was on target, at least with connecting with him, he'd give me an okay. But height, Vinny used to sit really low. And he even talked about that. If you've seen my Breakfast with Vinny podcast that Vinny loaded up a few weeks ago on YouTube, he used to sit really low. And he said, I was feeling really good. And then I came back to play, and suddenly my back was kind of out of whack. If you're sitting with your thighs this angle to your knee, not good. A lot of stress on the lower back. The same rate, though, you want to have enough of a height where you can feel and catch traction with the drop of your weight. If I drop from here, I don't really feel any weight. But if I lift up to here, I feel a little bit more of the actualized weight drop. So I want to have that. I can use that for timekeeping principles, access to your body weight. Now, there's more components that I would put in there because I don't want to just flat foot it, driving the bass drum beater into the head. You could do that. That's an effect. But, we want to sort of stay rooted to our higher level of acoustic principles and pop things off. Even though we know we got a lot of muting in there, but you could still get things to kind of open up a little bit more. So seat height, I sit, you can see, I'm going to sit sideways here. You can see I've got a pretty good slope from my hip down to my knee. And that allows me again, and I don't lift above my, hip here and draw any pressure in here. You want to sit rooted in your core and be able to shift your balance. Another thing I'm a huge proponent of is to have a drum throne that is solid in place. It sits. It's locked in. It's not a hydraulic. It's not a tractor style. If it's a tractor style, my legs get sucked into the vortex of that little groove. I want to be able to lift and drop. And if this were to spin the seat, or if it was a hydraulic and it's all bumping around, have I really accessed my full body weight? No. Let's go back to my talk at the very beginning of this stream. If you were trying to do a tree posture or tree pose of yoga, 1 foot, and balancing yourself on a trampoline, that's an unstable surface, good luck. You can maybe do it, but you're going to be whoa, because there's no stability. With seating, I want stability. I know other guys might go, whatever. But I can make the case, and I can also tell you that the amount of students that have adhered to that development, and like I said, there's more to it than me just talking about this. This is one piece. And then we got to talk about how our feet need to sit, etc. I don't want to get too deep into the woods. But absolutely, try sitting higher. See how it feels. Of course, it's going to feel weird at first if you've been conditioned to sit lower. But my whole principle now, and it evolved over years and years and years, I like to sit on top of the drums, right? In fact, my pad sits lower, but it allows me if I drop to this threshold of a strike, there I am, right there. And if I want to go a little bit below for a little more backbeat or get the hoop, right? Get a little rim shot, no problem. But now you're dealing with a raising and lowering of the forearm. So going back to our single stroke ideas, if I'm playing a 2-note molar, my forearm's not going to drop as low as it would in context to a 3 or 4-note molar. 4-note molar. So my forearm's dropping down to here. 2-note, I'm going to stay up here. I need leverage, and I need to sort of sit with where I'm going to sit on the stick. I also need to be in harmony with the teetering of the stick. So the seesaw factor of the stick is huge consideration. Anyway, I hope that answers your question. What exercises would you suggest to improve your wrists and turning wrists? Well, that's okay. I'm not going to get too deep in the woods on that, but I would want to identify my best turning point of my wrist. And along with that, I'd want to have a certain understanding of the closed-handed version of that, as well as the open-handed version of that. And so I would do, bounces would be one, just a natural basketball bounce. But I would fixate on having a center point to my turn. At the same time, with the close-handed approach, you want to make sure that when you're doing a close-handed, like a pickup, that there's a value of feeling a little opening and then pulling in and being able to not let the pressure point here impede the motion of the turn of the wrist, right? And that's again, there's certain factors that I would watch for to really build up what I would say the absolutely spot on, that's where you want to turn, and that's how it's going to work best for you. And there's a building block process. I have several steps to get the hand structured in a way whereby when you start to do the delivery of a bounce, it's natural and it works out. And the factor of that, in terms of concept, would feel the same as when you do a French grip open bounce, which would not be anything to do with the wrist, because there's no wrist in the French grip approach. In other words, there's no turning of the wrist in French grip. You're going to sit with your forearm, radius on the bones, as one component. There could be also a bounce factor where the forearm lifts and bounces in harmony with the stick. And then there's a setting of how much pressure points do you have in the fingers to stabilize the stick so the stick's not wonky and wobbly. And using it in time exercises to go like, well, here's an example of what you could do with open bounce eighth notes. Or here's an example of what you could do with eighth note molar in the French grip, a little bit more of a pumping along up tempo or medium up. Or here's a one-handed 16th note pattern in the French grip molar, adhering to all those principles that I would build upon to just refine how that moves. And then when you have the full understanding, then you can go into corrupted mode, where you're basically allowing for the, subtle, expressive posture gesture stuff to kick in. Excuse me while I take a sip here. I've had this scratchy kind of throat. I talk daily. And of course, today I'm talking again, but it has not rebounded yet. I'm hoping soon it'll come back. I feel great, but still got the,
Have you considered maybe doing sock puppet shows? You could maybe
I tell you what, not a bad idea. I'll get sock puppets, and my kids will march behind me with little signs, little like boards, like little thought bubble signs.
And just get maybe one of the kids to get some helium and do your voice. It'll sound,
Well, that'd be fun. I'm sure they'd love it. Of course, they'd only last about 5 minutes before they go, okay, we're bored now, Papa. Let's get out of here.
I thought I'd step in and give you a break while you get in the water. And I want to thank everybody. We've had a really good group of people in here today already. And,
nice.
We have some questions. I'm going to keep throwing those at you because I think, it's Q&A and all that. Right. And people want to get your advice and they don't want to see me. So I'll throw you back in there.
All right. Next one. Can you talk about pressure points and how to build them up? I can. Will I talk detailed? Not really, because that stuff, again, I don't want it to go floating out there in a corrupted fashion. But pressure points, for example, when you're, holding the stick in this position, there are certain pressure points in the back of the hand that I want to enact upon back here. If I'm talking about the French grip, the pressure point is still in the back of the hand. And those kind of pressure points, there's specific exercises and response factors that you want out of the stick so that it really adds the body to what you're after. Again, it's not BS stuff. It's stuff that I was doing since 1977. Freddie had a pretty good approach to a lot of that stuff. I've embellished. So I didn't just take the template and go like, okay, I'm going to regurgitate that. I've discovered through it, teaching, playing, recording, practicing, and yoga, like some other ideas about how that works. And those, not just manufacturing something out of nothing, a lot of times stuff comes out of me trying to fix a problem with a student, like a direct issue, like, how am I going to get this guy here? Because like, this guy's too loose. I got to kind of tighten up the screws a little bit. Or this guy's too tight. How do I formulate that? A lot of that has to do with, the rigidity of somebody's body posture, of course, but also here to get inroads inside how to message and really be able to relate to that individual so that they can make the prospective changes thereafter. I worked with, again, I've got a bunch of guys, like older guys, younger guys, medium guys, gals. I think my youngest student now is 14. And I've had guys in their 70s, but I don't know if I have any 70-year-olds now. I think they're all in their 60s, 50s, a couple guys in their 40s. It's all ranges. But nonetheless, the passing on the information and really bringing about the, what do you say? The messaging and getting the result. I always say in my email, my first thing, I am results driven. So I'm on your side to push you over the fence, not into the fence. And if you just follow what I'm talking about and hang, I can't give you Buddy Rich chops in a year, nor could Freddie Gruber. I was looking for that, and that's not going to happen. Do you prefer keeping the snare drum flat regardless? No, I keep my snare just slightly angled to me, but for brushes, it would be the same. And for brush playing, I'm a traditional grip guy. I cannot play. I mean, I've worked on trying to play the brushes in the match grip approach, because in every other scenario of music, I would play match grip no matter what. I worked on the value of the touch. And, for jazz playing, if I was playing something and, comping, my angle of my stick is basically kept in the same mode in my match grip. Now, that being said, if I do mess around with it. I teach the traditional grip, but the identity of the traditional grip, for example, the positioning of it does offer a little different feel. It's just fact. You're in a different position, how you're holding the stick. So, again, I'll go back to my discussion with Vinny. We talked about that. And he said, it makes you kind of perform a little different. Absolutely. But I worked so long and hard to perform in this position and get all the little nuance that I wanted out of the match grip that, I just kind of, after, it could have been 6, 8, 10 months, I don't remember, but a pretty good length of time with Freddie for all the building blocks of traditional grip. So much so that I retained, well, that's my head anyway, but since I was a kid, I have sort of a compartmentalized good sense of recall. And so, I put those on the side, kind of kept them in a little shelving place. And later on in the, I don't know, somewhere in the mid 90s, I resurrected them all and started practicing them and just kind of focusing on them. And then, started to put forward some conceptual ideas that I developed and grew to understand a little better in the match grip. And because essentially, conceptually, what you're trying to do, man, is get everything to work the same. Molar's molar. It's a locomotive action. Okay, in the traditional grip, you're gonna be kind of backhanding it, right? In this position, your palm's coming down towards the pad, but here you're throwing back. But it's still about the weight of the stick drawing you forward. So anyways, there's a lot of conceptual, unification between all those positions. And there's a lot of pressure point unifications as well that you can think of. However, each individual position is going to have just a subtle difference that needs to be met with good clarity and good, mindfulness to operate in the highest of levels. Again, I could sit here and go like, you don't need to do that. You don't have to do anything. But if you want to refine how the stick sits in your hand and really be heightened in your awareness of balance, weight, and positioning, and the nimbleness that you can acquire, then it's an interesting conversation. If you're worried about, RLRKK, LRLRKKK, you're looking for licks, you got, go to YouTube, go to Instagram, find a reel of a guy popping one out. You're good to go. For me, I wanted to develop my own sense of vocabulary. I know we're all built from who we listen to, but I can't sound like this guy or that guy or the other guy, nor do I really want to. I want to try to focus on my own thing. I took your Drumeo course and absolutely loved it. One of the challenges I have is to stop thinking when it comes to performing. Any suggestion on keeping the technique? This is like the age-old question. How do I get out of my head when I'm playing? And it is a challenge. Practice by doing, that's the only thing I can say. I would find myself sometimes kind of getting in my head and getting in my way. I guess focus on your breath, focus on the whole component of what's going on musically. In other words, the being part of, what it is. When you're a component of the thing and you're thinking about, oh, I want to support the bass player and the vocalist and let her or him really feel like they're floating on air, you might kind of draw back and not be thinking because you're just focusing on, just their enjoyment and their betterment of their performance. That's getting into like serving up and not being a selfish musician. I think a lot of times, because we are such a physical instrument and there's a little bit of like showboating and stuff that we do as drummers, that you might get, afflicted with that headspace. But the bigger issue is good timekeeping skills. Like one of my students does some jazz gigs, and his attitude is sometimes like, yeah, but I'm okay. I kind of get stuck when I play fours. I don't have like some slick chops. Yet the guys he plays with, who he says are really great players, they call him back all the time because he knows how to sit back and just keep good time. So there's, an element of bringing yourself back and not trying to stand in the foreground. Now that's counter to the narrative that we get on YouTube, all the reels, TikTok, blah, 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 Instagram and Facebook, because you get some blah, 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 blah going on with some guy. And it's like, oh, wow, what was that? But I don't know. Is that guy working a gig? I don't know. I'm not sure. I say that there's a huge illusion with social media because you see a wall of many people, a tapestry of all these people, and you think like everybody's having a party except me. Don't worry about them. Take care of yourself. That's the most important value. Everybody's trying to put out like a teaching thing. Maybe they're not really teaching. That's nice. Okay. I'm too busy to sit on social media because I'm working all the time. Frederick, I'm looking forward to seeing you too, brother. I was telling my son this morning, I said, because he mentioned something about Sweden. And I said, there's going to be a guy from Sweden showing up at Mayrhofen, which great opportunity. Jeff's right on it. I still have a couple places. If anybody's in Europe and you want to join me in Mayrhofen, Austria, I don't know about the hotel, but there's plenty of places to stay in Mayrhofen. 21st through the 23rd of June. Sign up. Have fun, man. I think it's going to be a blast. It's going to be 2 intensive days. We'll open it up on Friday night with just a little kind of chat and hang, get familiar with everybody that's there. And then bingo, man, we're going to be knocking it out of the park on Saturday and Sunday with a lot of details, and a lot of individual one-on-one. So Frederick, I'll see you there. Hank Jan, yesterday I did some show techniques in a very easy, slow music. And today use those techniques because I really required it. Yeah, exactly. That's right, man. It's all about serving up the music. What do you need to do for the music? If you can expand your elasticity of your approaches, that might offer you better detail to what you want to do. If you're somebody that can only play eighth notes with a down, up motion, and you don't have an open bounce where the eighth notes are all seamlessly strung together and that they're all the same, dynamic range, and they're kind of just pumping along like a Motown thing, that might not be the right feel that somebody's looking for when you're auditioning or you're looking to play with somebody. And you got to listen clear to like what's going on with the large landscape and the large library of musical settings that we might find ourselves in. So all different ranges of movement can really adhere or advance yourself to what you need to do when you're on the set. I've got a whole bunch of stuff of movement that I do for getting comfortable around the kit so that whatever instrument you go to, you're, feeling good about that. We want to adhere to some of the paths of least resistance. So any other questions here? Yeah. Thanks. It's easy to start thinking about fulcrum, drop, catch, what my wrist is doing, etc. Okay, that's good. Yeah, I mean,
I think that's a response to the
yeah. It's easy to start. Oh, I see. It is to think about that stuff. But when you get into it, you got to abandon, because you can't take, like, I'll go back to a yoga analogy. You look in a book like whatever, Iyengar book or whatever, and you're looking at somebody do a posture, and it's, wow, that guy's so perfect in his position, and you're beginning or you're intermediate and you're not quite there. You can't expect to be like that. You've got to work within the confines of where you're at. Feel and be aware of as much as you can, and breathe, right? Feel and breathe. And if you're getting in your head and you're thinking about it, and all of a sudden things are getting tight, well, that's obviously getting in your own way. You're starting to, oh shit, man, that's not working out. So as you go and do your repetitive motion of practice, one of the things you're looking to do is to dial into the redundancy and the consistency of that, so that this, if you're using a one-handed 16th note molar thing, doesn't get in your way. It's like you're not thinking about, oh, my arm, I'm getting so tight. You're just flowing along. Set up the hand right, practice. I mean, in my old days when I was, early with my brother and our early bass player, Matt, and I would say, you practice, you get good, and silly, but nothing could be truer. If you don't tend to the garden, the weeds grow. And so mindfully practicing and being aware of, your strengths, not always playing with your strengths, although when you go to the gig, you bring your strengths. You're not out there to go say like, well, geez, I want to work on my left hand a little bit more, so I'm going to try to play some left hand lead. If it's not up to par, then you don't even think about that. You just play with your strengths and tap into, like I said, the tapestry of what's going on with the music. Everybody's a component to put this presentation of the song. Live inside of it. Become the song. I know yeah, man, become the song. Yeah, cool. That's what it is. Go to the most flowing guy, like a Weckel or a Vinnie Colaiuta on the improvisational style, or for a groove thing, like a Levon Helm or Ringo. Just think of Ringo. Matter of factly, just sat down and just, I don't think there was anything other than just playing that song, So acquire, what do I say? The practice to get to the headspace where you go, I'm not in my head, I'm just playing. That, again, you can't just will it. It's not going to come without putting forth some intention. Intention is like, that's your guide, intention. I want that. I want that. Things will come out, and kind of put you in that mode. Along with yoga, meditation, man. You got to do your meditation, whatever that means to you. I mean, there's a lot of different practices. Sag, Drag, and Fall by Sid King and the 5 strings requires 180 beats, swung eighth notes on the hi-hat, cross stick on 2 and 4. Let's see, 180. Let's check that out. Hang on. 180. So that's swung, huh? I hope that's what you're asking for. That's what the question looked like. For a shuffle, it's better and a path of least resistance if you're sitting inside with the push-pull method. And the pulls are on the quarter notes and the pushes are on the uhs. Thank you, Mark. And if you were trying to molar it out, that's a lot of muscling. Now, I would use that kind of a motion because it would feel kind of flimsy if I was playing a push-pull a little bit slower. So your RPM levels and your gear shifting ratios need to be kind of recognized as to, oh, when I go here, I need to kind of step into this approach. And it's not, it is a conscious thought to a degree, but on the bandstand, I wouldn't even think about it. It would just be an automated adjustment. I call that the inner logic of movement. It's built on momentum, and you just know you have your tool pack and pull that one out. Okay, that's the one that works here. And then, oh, now I got to do this. And so that push-pull, that's a large frame topic, because I have very definitive actions to get someone there. I wouldn't start with that. That becomes a extension of things I would do in setting up the German. So I would set up the German stuff, and I would set up, some molar elements of movement hand to hand. And then I would set up the single hand version of molar, along with setting up all the double stroke moves, because those would have lifts and drops to them. Every roll would have a choreographed arrangement to it, and sometimes more than one, maybe a couple, maybe three. I don't know. We got to investigate all the rolls, and then I'll tell you. We'll assess. But the idea of that, the push-pull, it essentially lives in a lot of things we do. But the actualizing of it for the arrangement of playing time, I have a very specific guidance to that. But the attributes that come forward, man, are like, yes, all good, all real good. And I don't use the thumb. That can aggravate the tendons. So I don't know how guys are feeling when they're doing that. But I work on a natural principle of when you drop the wrist, the fingers naturally draw open. If I pull it back, they'll pull in. Those ropes are all tied together. Am I just letting it go and not having any form? No. There's a bond and a stickiness that the fingers and the stick need to adhere to. There's a placement inside the hand where the stick needs to sit, so you maximize where you are inside. So when you're doing those push to pulls for, like I said, for like 4-stroke rough paradiddles, which Jimmy Chapin told me many years ago, that's the stupidest rudiment ever invented. Whoops. You're getting a rip, 3 grace notes in front of a dominant note. Even the 3-stroke rough, still tough. And then when you spread out the 3-stroke rough, the 3-stroke rough being alternating strokes is spread out. When you dense it up to the drag, now you have even more of a refined squeeze that you need to have inside the hand to actualize getting those 2 grace notes to sit right on top of the note. You could spread them out, but then that's going to alter maybe the rhythmic arrangement of what you do. So, if it was meant to be that other arrangement, then they wouldn't have written it out that way. But, there are interpretive ideas behind that stuff. I kind of sometimes stand firmly behind a literal and then start to go like, if you bring it over here, you could use it like this. So anyway, I hope that kind of, gives you a little food for thought and color. If you want the details, come to me. I'll definitely set you up. Now, I say come to me. I'm also kind of nervous about that because I always have a pretty full schedule, but there's always a hole, and at some point somebody does drop off. I tend to keep a lot of students for a pretty long period of time, as there is many things to kind of get into to push your playing forward. And again, that's my ultimate goal. I'm all about the results. So, and I have to, remind everybody that nothing comes from doing nothing. You got to keep sticks in your hand. I put a post because I had like a Facebook memory that came up, and it was like I did an interview with this guy. I can't remember his name, but he had a podcast called Drummers I Like, and he put a quote on the thing. Maybe it could have been Drumeo, maybe, I don't remember, but I know it was from that podcast guy. But it was like, I would say I wasn't the most disciplined guy right away, but I always had an organized notebook. Meaning I always knew like what I needed to do. I compartmentalized everything, vivid recall to what I needed to do. And eventually I worked on the discipline factor to bring it up to a stage where, okay, now I'm really making traction. And so, being in this environment, in this room right here on a daily basis, very fortunate to be kind of sitting around with this stuff and getting a chance to, keep the tendons and the lubricant inside the fascia and the muscles and all that stuff, keeping the gears nice and loose. So at my young age, I'm 65, feel pretty damn good, gotta say. But again, it's a lifestyle decision and it's a choice. And even if you're not going to make your living playing drums, it's a lifestyle. You do it. You're just a drummer, and you work at maintaining, building, and reevaluating and pushing yourself forward and trying to get playing experience, because that's the ultimate. You're there to play. I mean, yeah, you can play the tunes on a MP3 or whatever and kind of hang. That's good too. That's good practice. I used to do that all the time. Played in my records. Anyway, any other questions there, Jeff?
We're kind of ending on questions, but there's Hank made a comment that kind of sticks with me a little bit. When it kind of encapsulates the discussion point of, I almost never get compliments of my drummer colleagues when I serve the music, but my fellow musicians or singers do like it when I support them or support the song. And I can tell you that, and I know you agree, but as my own development evolution, I think drummers sometimes, a lot of drummers are actually kind of insecure, and that's why we sit in the back. But I always felt like I could hire other drummers. Why they have me for 20, 30 years on these projects? And they all come back to that same comment. Well, you can always find somebody who can maybe shred or do this, but at the end of the day, you support what we're trying to say. And at the end of the day, that's why you get paid. And that really is the key. So I think we have to remember that. And I think it's really important.
That's
a great comment there.
That's a great comment. And that's the working, that's what you want to hear from your workmates. You're not being hired by other drummers. You're being hired by vocalists and keyboard players and bassists and guitarists and saxophonists or whatever other instruments might be in your world of music. And those are the people you want to make the impression on. If you're fumbling around with them and trying, I'll tell you a quick story. So maybe I've told this before. Back in 1980 or 79, no, it was 80. I was playing in a casual band and I was really into Tony Williams. And so I'd be playing this. So I'm playing this group of triplets in groups of four. So 1 and lead, 2 and lead, 3 and 4 and lead, 2 and lead, 3. Ding, ding, ding. All right. I was doing it all over the place. So I'm playing a standard. We do that first set where you're playing the jazz tunes, and you're playing All of Me, or All the Things You Are, or whatever. And the guitar player, who was probably about maybe 5-6 years older than me, he was a really good guitar player. He had a real insights into Beatles and Stones and stuff that I really wasn't thinking about so detailed back then. And I remembered on a break when I was doing this, and I was in my head playing this thing. Yeah. He came back to me. He said, "Hey man, is everything all right, man? Is everything cool? And I was kind of
never good when they ask you if everything's all right.
But I was kind of what do you mean? What do you mean by that? I'm fine. I'm fine. But I got it. I connected. I went, oh shit. Oh yeah. Note to self. Yeah. Minimize practice on the gig.
That was the nicest. That was the nicest. Get your shit together comment probably you've ever received.
It was a good one, and obviously it stood with me because here I am. 45 years later or 44 years later, still talking about it.
Those comments do resonate, the good ones and the bad ones, or you don't get called back on the gigs or whatever. It is. When you and I talked recently, I mentioned, I'm like, I feel like, my lessons with you over the years and conversations, and I could tell I improved. I just did a recording session where I totally leaned on things that we talked about in all your sessions, and it really worked for me. And but I said to you, it's so easy to get wrapped up, as you were talking about, all the Instagram and all the endless volume of these amazing players who are just doing these quick 30 seconds. But you think I have to be able to do all that or no one's ever going to hire me. And I'm thinking, that's just not true. And it's fine to go out and say, I want to do, maybe it's for fun, I want to do this X, Y, or Z. That's cool. But at the end of the day, man, just be the best, complete, comfortable, person behind that kit as you can be. And I heard a couple comments here. People were talking about, they'd taken lessons with you and they were like, I just feel more comfortable. I'm not leaning on gear. I'm not leaning on excuses because I can lean on these things that I've acquired over time. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. So anyway,
Yeah.
Great opportunity here to, kind of get together with the community or our community of people. Got to thank Jeffrey for being behind there with the questioning and pushing the buttons and all that stuff. Appreciate you, Jeff.
Appreciate you.
And we'll probably do this. We'll probably reboot in July because I'm actually traveling and I'll be out a little bit. When I get back, we'll look ahead, spotlight a date, and I hope we'll hang and have some more fun and frivolity. Always be, free to ask me a question, or if you want to get in, send me an email through my website. If you want to get set up for a lesson, just give me your time zone, your times of availability, etc. And when I can fit you in, I'll do so. I got guys all over the planet, and it's working so far with getting everybody in. So that's it.
All right.
I say that everybody have a great, we're into summer now, summer vacation. I know down in the Southern Hemisphere, they would say have winter vacation, but we're here in sunny Southern California looking ahead to the heat. So, all right, everybody.
All right, Bruce, I'll see you on the other side until we get to number 3.
All right, man.
See you guys
Very
then.
good. Cheers, everybody.